Happy making me feel real sad before we start this game, ironically enough. It's just like, you alone, Rifkin? Forever alone? I'm like, yes. Of course, he was just looking into whether I had a co-caster or not. Good guy Happy. I forgot to put a tweet out about this. I'll have to do that afterwards. But what I do want to do is pull up their Twitters for the introductions, because spawning here in the top left corner of the map in this best of 3 in the quarterfinals of the EnerJ Monthly Cup, well, the monthly finals, to be more precise, it is the Red Terran player, Empire Happy. Find him on Twitter at Empire Happy. His opponent in the lower right. He's Teal, he's Terran. He is the mighty JJakji from My Insanity. Of course, find him on Twitter at JJakji. Again, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, so I will not bring this up a lot, but if you're just tuning in, I apologize in advance. I am confirmed sick at this point, if you can't tell by my voice. I'm trying not to let that stop me as I try to power on through this and get some more good games out for you guys. But the nice thing about this bracket is, well, first off, type !brackets in chat if you haven't already to get a link for that. There's so many good games. There's so many good players here. And while we're casting Empire Happy versus JJakji here in the bottom half of the brackets, you got Bly waiting for an opponent, the winner of Tefl versus Cope. You got Stardust waiting for either Ghost or Poker Ray to advance. I mean, the finals, hell, the semifinals are going to be stacked, much less the finals, and I'm very much looking forward to this. Now, one thing I'm a little bit scared of, though, if you check the bottom half of the brackets, JJakji may end up having to team kill, or Stardust may have to team kill, depending on who gets where. But by the looks of things, going off of the balance of the brackets, I did talk earlier in the last series about how it's pretty nice they got a mix-up of Zergs, Protoss, and Terran throughout this. You'll notice they didn't exactly split them in the best way throughout the brackets, but what they basically guaranteed, there is 100% impossibility of a ZVZ finals because there are no Zerg players in the bottom half of the brackets. I just realized that. Don't know whether that was on purpose or by accident, but it is a great coincidence because as much as I do love ZVZ, I do find mirror matchups to be, well, you know what, I take that back. I was going to say mirror matchups tend to be the least dynamic matchups, but Terran versus Terran is fantastic. And Zerg versus Zerg, if you guys didn't see Snoot versus Tefl in the Go for StarCraft finals this past week, that was a really intense ZVZ that went by very quickly. So I take all that back. That's not a correct statement at all in the slightest. I just find, I do just find other matchups to be a little more entertaining. But I do love me some TVT, not to take anything away from this series. And these two players have actually met up quite a few times in the past. And like I said in the past, and I'll say it again now, Happy is one of the few players in Europe who not only can, but often does take games off of JJakji. This could actually be JJakji's series to lose, depending on how this goes. I know he's kind of the favorite in this series. He's the Korean, after all. SCV gets the kill, I think.
First blood.
Looks like the Reaper got the kill, but the SCV's adding just enough damage to make this a real pain to deal with. Happy is, in fact, repairing his SCVs from this Reaper. A little bit more pain being caused than I think anticipated, but Hellion will clean that up with a couple of Marines. So no more worse for wear is Happy losing one SCV and a small amount of resources to repair. Curiously enough, I guess repair doesn't go towards resources lost. Didn't know this. I believe, and someone can correct me in the numbers here if I'm wrong, I think repair is like 20% of the cost of the unit. So it doesn't cost a lot to repair, but it should still show up down here. It's kind of a neat thing I never noticed. Kind of like Archons for a while didn't show up in the unit's lost tab. Anyways, JJakji is going to be getting that quicker starport out, so he's got Hellions already on the way, but Happy already has the starport finished. He's not looking to go for a Banshee. He's just looking to elevate some Hellions if he doesn't get past the natural here, but JJakji's got 4 Marines at the top of the ramp, and this command center is in no immediate danger, despite the fact that, you know, you'd think Terran buildings would be flammable. Hellions don't exactly take it down very quickly. A very common drop to do on this map is to just basically situate your Hellions and Marines here, bring the medevac, and just unload them up in this dead space. It does catch players off guard on a regular basis. The scary thing, though, is... oh, JJakji is preparing for a Banshee. He is preparing for a Banshee, guys. Viking out first. Not that this will be a bad thing, per se. You can actually land the Viking, and it's pretty darn effective versus the Hellions, but Marines still bring the pain. They got a lot of damage associated with them, and I don't know how this is going to go. Happy's opening at least isn't really necessarily that all in. Both players did expand off of this, so a bit of a dedicated opening. What's a little bit scary though is JJakji does have 4 of his own Hellions, so Happy can't really take the advantage in that regard. In fact, both players pretty well met here. The only difference being that medevac, but Hellion Wars, of course, positioning is everything. Splash damage is a hell of a thing to deal with, and these Marines being clumped the way they are going to regret having clumped up. Now there's a Viking giving chase to this medevac. It's boosted on out, but Hellion's going to pursue the ground units, and unfortunately, Happy, I think, is in for more than a bit of trouble. Push it across the map. There's no bunker down. There's no siege tanks. There's not even a full wall off. These Hellions could go straight to the mineral lines, but decide to come back for the middle of the map, try to take a bit of a fight here. Scuffle does actually start evening out the forces a little bit, so neither player really coming out too far ahead. Happy with barely Marines alive and a couple more Hellions. But JJakji's reinforcing across here. What's really important for Happy is, well, actually, hang on, hold that thought for a second. Looks like JJakji's going to go and finish this off. A lot of these units are dead, and JJakji actually pulls back the weak Hellion, only loses one there. So, not the greatest trade in the world for Happy, but that doesn't set him out of this game. He's got a siege tank coming up now. He's got his own Viking because he thinks JJakji's probably going to be responding with a Banshee. In fact, a second Viking is going to come out. But this is not at all a problem because this is what you typically have, TVT. If you're playing mech, especially, you're going to get a lot of Hellions. You're going to have a lot of Vikings in anticipation of your opponent having both plenty of each. But Happy's not going to be playing mech. Going to be going for that bio. Let's just wait and see what that third building was going to be in it. Well, I guess fourth building in this particular instance. But JJakji will be sticking to his mech. Happy with playing with his bio. This is where it gets a little bit scary, guys, because for typically JJakji, you know, you're a player, you play mech, it takes longer to get your units out. You don't normally push so early, but with only a tank and a Viking, and was this like a small amount of Marines, actually Happy should be able to hold this. I take that back. I thought he had much less Marines than he really did. Tank going to focus down the Viking, and the Viking going to boost down for Happy, but with the second tank coming out, unsieged, a lot better than siege. Of course, it's got really high damage. Or sorry, not really high damage, but really high rate of fire, as we see Ellie's just popping off left and right. It looks like the Marine should be enough to chase this back. Even gets the Viking on the tail end, so almost dead even now on the resources lost, trading it up quite nicely here. Blue Flame on the way. It looks like we're going to have a bit of a drop come down. Now, with the way Happy's actually split up his buildings here, this isn't going to come in undetected. The problem is Marines. Oh, Marines are not the best Hellion defense, guys. Even if you spread out a lot. Well, actually, I take that back. If you got like 8 Marines and they're spread out perfectly, they can take on 4 Hellions. Just has to be done maybe with an SCV pull too, some distraction tactics, whatever you need to do. It's just really important you don't let Blue Flame Hellions go unabated in your mineral line because SCVs will die. But, okay, unloading into the dead space. Happy's pulling his units back perhaps a little bit too soon. This leaves the pathway open and... oh no, his mineral line is forfeit. There's no Blue Flame, of course, attached to this, but Hellion's still really good versus light units. And the SCVs contemplated pulling for a second. They're like, oh wait, let's not line up into the Hellion fire. Marines looks like they will be able to drive this back. Ooh, if the Viking can clean up the medevac, that'd be sweet. But, okay, a couple workers killed. In fact, how many? 6. Not too shabby. Ooh, gets the medevac with one of the Hellions still alive inside of it. A small victory, but a decent victory. 2 tanks are more than enough to keep these Hellions at bay. So the advantage of mech, by the way, guys, if you've never seen Mech Wars, you know, first off, welcome to TVT. There's almost always one person who plays mech. I can't remember the last time I saw bio versus bio, but... you know, Hellions are light units. Hellbats are even better because they're still light units but with a much larger health pool. They allow you to push into the tank lines, they soak the tank fire, and allow the more important units like your own tanks or your own Vikings to get up behind this and do some more damage to them. Happy's tanks positioned the way they are not too shabby because you can't really just run up from this low ground. It's really hard to siege down here without getting shot at first. I mean, I actually really like the positioning of these 2 tanks defensively. That being said, JJakji's going to have a lot more tanks, a lot more production, and be able to throw a lot more weight into Happy's army in order to push inwards. Once a siege line is established, it's really difficult to break. Doesn't matter whether you're bio, doesn't matter whether you're mech. And of course, the Hellions, the point I was talking about before, not only do they allow you to get to the tanks a little bit quicker, their movement speed is fantastic, so they get right on top of the tanks into their dead zone. Friendly fire goes off like crazy. Marines will melt. And Marauders are armored units. They don't take bonus damage from that Blue Flame. But hell, guys, let's be honest. If you got 40 Hellions all doing splash damage, it doesn't matter whether they have bonus damage or not. Marauders will still die. Very small drop is moving out here. He's expecting to pick off a couple siege tanks if he can, but of course the Vikings keep the medevac back and stop it from doing precisely that. Like I said, Marauders still go down to Hellions, guys. They might not do bonus damage, but they still hit pretty darn hard. Another really key thing about the bio, ooh, nice scan to see if it was safe to move forward or not. Another key thing about playing bio in this matchup, you have to be able to split out. Your army has to be able to divide. Mobility is the greatest thing on your side when you're doing this, but oh god, are those the tanks loaded up in there? Those are the tanks loaded up in there. Looks like Happy's gonna go for a bit of a doom drop into JJakji's base. Unfortunately, the barracks will scout this coming. I don't know if this will deter him or not. But no third base out of Happy, and he's really behind JJakji as far as economy goes. He's going to fall further behind a player who's meant to struggle with his economy and his mech. But that's not happening here at all. A couple siege tanks in a good spot can try and help make sure there's no production that comes out to defend against this. Two siege tanks of JJakji are in range of the bow. Happy needs to back off a little bit, but he sees the army of his opponent on the other side of the map. He's got to be careful. Looks for an opening, finds an opening, but unfortunately it's guarded by a lot of Hellions, so not really, I guess, an opening in that regard. Siege tank coming to the low ground, going to do a bit more damage. Picks off one of the siege tanks, but is that going to be enough? Happy's got no defense, so it's a bit weird to consider. It's not even like a race, it's an attempted base trade, I guess you would call it. But siege tanks for Happy will not stand against the 4 siege tanks of JJakji. But the bio may be able to clean this up. No, never mind, I take that back. Not a chance with the medevacs going down. With some intense micro, perhaps, maybe, but I think game 1 is going to have to go to JJakji. Happy's going to be forfeiting his natural in just a moment's time. He does not have the production to deal with this. And if he had more Vikings, then maybe he can start dropping on top of these siege tanks. But the small medevac drop, it'll pick off a tank or two for sure, but I don't know if it'll do much more than that. Vikings are here to defend, unsieges immediately. JJakji is in no real danger. Vikings down the high, or not in the high ground, but rather in air mode. Fighter mode will be able to chase down the command center. The orbital is going to actually die. Can he repair it? Looks like not. And with them guarding the tanks, JJakji, you know, he's not going to get dropped upon. Good game's called. Game 1, going to go to JJakji.